This is Gray Matter, where we process the gray areas of culture. I'm Kaitlin Puccio, and today's topic is when is life? The legal question of abortion has recently overshadowed the ethical question of abortion. The ethics are often expressed as stated conclusions and opinions, which are expected to have an effect on the law. Parties on both sides of the argument are dissatisfied then when the law is unsettled or overturned or disparate, but the conversation doesn't advance toward a nexus between ethics and law. To advance, there needs to be a reformulation of the way in which arguments are presented. If we assume that morality is not a man-made concept, but a greater absolute Platonistic form, then morality itself does not change from U.S. state to U.S. state. If this morality were driving U.S. abortion law and we had a way of knowing for certain which decisions did and did not meet the Platonistic form standard of morality, the law would be the same across America, and personal moral views would be in alignment on both sides of the aisle. This is obviously not the case. Whether or not morality is a social construct, man-made U.S. law is not equivalent to ethics or morality. The law does not dictate ethics, and some ethics are not codified as law. A legal argument for or against abortion that's based solely on morality, whether man-made or not, will probably then fail. For example, if we ask why an individual is pro-life, the answer given might be because abortion is murder and therefore it should be banned. If we ask why an individual is pro-choice, the response is likely to be my body, my choice, and thus abortion should be permissible. But these answers, abortion is murder and my body, my choice, they're conclusions, they're not reasons. They're relying on the false impression that ethics is reflected in law. An answer that's more fully responsive to the question needs to address, for example, why abortion is murder. Specifically, murder must be defined. If murder is defined as taking a life, then how does one define life? How does one determine how to define life? Once these answers are set forth as premises, a logical conclusion will arise that is incapable of being pierced. If a pro-choicer does not accept one of the premises, then that is the root of the incompatibility of the pro-life and pro-choice arguments that needs to be addressed. This is really the only way to move forward beyond the ethical question to the legal question. So again, the root cause of the issue is deeper than beliefs. Putting forth beliefs is not equivalent to presenting a valid and sound argument, and easily collapsible arguments are why we've been unable to bridge the gap between pro-lifers and pro-choicers. Progress could actually be made if the incompatible premise of an argument is uncovered as the root cause of individuals holding conflicting opinions regarding the correct legal outcome of an issue. So there are two parts to formulating a strong argument for or against abortion. First, we have to determine what questions to answer in order to formulate the premises for the argument. Legal and ethical questions surrounding end-of-life care and abortion are not generally considered in tandem, but the arguments propounded in discussions of end-of-life are actually very well suited to discussions of abortion and vice versa. For example, my body, my choice might also ring true for proponents of assisted suicide. Similarly, determining when life ends may help determine when life begins. Is death defined as the cessation of the capacity for circulatory and respiratory function? Is it the permanent cessation of all brain function, the permanent cessation of the capacity for consciousness? If death, which can be argued as the antipode of life, is determined by a cardiopulmonary standard, then life might be as well. We might say that life begins with a heartbeat, and after a heartbeat is detected, a fetus is considered to be alive, and thus abortion after that time should be prohibited. For this argument to hold up in practice, we would need to further define what is a heartbeat as opposed to electrical activity, and address whether motion indicates life, in particular the motion of a developing fetal heart. We also then need to consider whether words even in fact matter in our arguments. Words are man-made. They're a combination of letters with stipulated definitions used to try to indicate a concept. Should referring to something as a heartbeat versus cardiac activity change the way in which the facts are interpreted? Parsing common language is probably unhelpful in determining an objective point at which life begins and ends, because common language is unreliable in its capacity to be accurately understood. If an argument rests on a word, for example, heartbeat, then that word must be defined in the argument as it is meant to be understood in the context of the argument. Language is critical precisely because language is not critical. What does that mean? It's crucial to carefully express ideas using the least ambiguous verbiage, because words themselves are malleable tools used to express non-malleable concepts. I might define death as the cessation of all brain functions, and my adversary may define death as the cessation of cardiopulmonary function. We both may use and understand the word death in common parlance to describe a state of non-life, but we struggle to find a common definition of death when asked how to determine when it has occurred. We can never be sure if there is a pure Platonistic form of ethics that would objectively determine the morality of abortion, but ensuring that an argument is logical and fact-based and that the language used is clear will allow us to identify the fundamental differences in our perception of the facts used in support of the argument. Rather than argue over conclusions, we'll be able to address the reasons we arrive at opposite outcomes.